heebie-jeebies and refused to do any work. "Yes, Ma," I replied, crestfallen. "I'm coming," and trudged towards the house, leaving behind the cacophony of calls, while remembering the last time it had rained when I had captured a huge fat bullfrog and had insisted on taking it to bed with me. Of course, it had no plans to obey the whims of a small, irritating human, so it had bounced noisily around the house all night, and finally, in the morning, when the servants had pulled in for work, this huge bullfrog had growled in indignation and bounced right past our Cookie. Well, I'll tell you, there was pandemonium. Cookie had a complete wobbly, and was last seen exiting the kitchen door. I'm even sure some smoke was seen coming from his heels, followed by the rest of the staff. None of them were at all interested in coming back into the house until Padaperp had been removed. After I'd been cleaned up and tucked into bed, Ma and Pops kissed me good night. Properly exhausted and with the padas and crickets serenading me outside the window, I drifted into a deep, fitful sleep, dreaming about Toad of Toad Hall. My family had just moved to a new home outside Welkom in the Orange Free State, quite close to the new President Brand gold mine. My father, Ginger Mudd, known as Gin to my mother and Pa or Pops to us kids, was a successful mining engineer, well on his way up the corporate ladder of Anglo-American, and had recently been appointed general manager of the new mine. We had a beautiful new home, quite close to the mine, overlooking a vast salt pan filled with flamingos and all types of waterfowl. My mother, Joan, my father called her Joni, but we called her Ma, had met my father in Kimberley before the Second World War, when he had joined the South African Air Force, and had been in training as a pilot. Joni had been with the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, the WAAFs. The relationship had lasted throughout the war, and Pops had ended up as a squadron leader flying Marauder bombers. He may have been described as a born leader, and definitely a gentleman from the old school. At that time in the Free State, there were 3 of us kids. Jane, or Janie, was my older sister by 5 years, tall and slim at the tender age of 10. Patricia, known as Tish or Tishbomb, was the middle sister, short and pudgy at 8 years old and full of bubbly life. Last but not least was me, christened Jack William Burnand Mudd. I was also a rather large kid, erring on the side of overweight. Nicknames came aplenty later on, but Cakey was the first. Among us siblings there was never much peace. At some stage or another during the day, some sort of fracas would erupt, and I seem to remember that Tishbomb seemed always to be in the thick of it. These minor disturbances were quickly and smartly put to rest by Ma, or, if it escalated to a more serious affair, Pa would be obliged to step in and quell the violence. Yet it seems that the children of most families tend to practice the same sort of vying for favor. My 2 sisters attended the local Christian Brothers College, CBC, in Welkom, and each morning they would be dropped off at school in Pa's company vehicle, driven by Britzy or Mr. Brits, the mine driver, who would collect them again in the afternoon and deliver them safely home. Fortunately, I was left to my own devices. Unlike most kids who were looked after by a nanny, I was overseen by a young black man called a garden boy, or mafogis, a guard in those days, who was usually employed by the mine to look after the property, the garden, and simply as a general gopher. My minder at the time was a Shangaan whose Christian name was William, although to all of us he was known simply as Willie. I suppose Willie was then about 18 or 19, but he soon became my hero. I couldn't wait to be with him. At first we found communication rather difficult, to say the least. Willie could speak his home language, Xitsonga, a smattering of Afrikaans, and Fanagalo, which may be rendered in isiZulu as Fana Ngalo, like this. This pidgin or hybrid language, which included expressions borrowed from English and Afrikaans, had been taught by the mine companies to encourage mutual comprehension among the various language speakers from southern Africa. At my young age, I myself could speak only